Welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show. I'm your host, Ryan Cartledge. I know that you're here because you want to master your animal training skills using a force-free approach. And to handle the variety of challenges you face, you need a broad knowledge and experience base. The problem is, we all get stuck and hit rough patches in our training, which can leave us feeling overwhelmed and helpless. Our mission since 2015 is to empower trainers just like you. The Animal Training Academy has helped thousands of trainers globally to develop skills, gain confidence, and positively influence both animal and human learners. Here's how we can do the same for you. Sign up for our membership waitlist at www.atamember.com. Register when our doors open email arrives and start growing your training skills. Build impactful training practices benefiting you and those you train. So join the waitlist at www.atamember.com. And while waiting, enjoy this free podcast show. We want to see you avoid embarrassment, overwhelm, and burnout. Instead, we want to see you build resilience to setbacks, get more organized, and grow your training skills and knowledge. In short, we want to see you enjoy confidence in yourself as a trainer and lead a fulfilling life, positively impacting the lives of the animal and human learners you work with. But we will start today's episode where we will talk to one Tabitha Kucera. Tabitha has always had a profound connection with animals, nurturing her passion from a young age. After graduating as a registered veterinary technician from Stotzenberger College in 2010, she dedicated her career to animal welfare. Her encounters with miscommunication-induced issues between animals and humans ignited her interest in animal behaviour and training. Aiming to solve and prevent feline and canine behavioural problems, Tabitha embarked on a self-learning journey. She garnered accreditations such as low stress handling, elite fear-free certifications, KPA, CTP, and certified cat behaviour consultant from the IAABC. Remarkably, she's one of only 30 to have her Veterinary Technician Specialists in Behaviour designation globally. Tabitha's mission is to help maintain animals in their loving homes by improving the understanding between pets and their owners. She educates through behaviour consulting, writing, and lecturing, addressing various dog and behavioural issues. Her wide-ranging knowledge helps reduce fear, anxiety, and stress related to veterinary visits, handling, travel, and medical procedures. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Tabitha to the ATA podcast show today. Who's patiently waiting by. Tabitha, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us at ATA.
Thank you for having me and that beautiful intro. I feel like I'm going to have to use your recording because your accent sounds so much better than mine in the future. But I really appreciate you taking the time to do that lovely introduction.
Well, I like to think that our podcast is popular because of the content, but I do appreciate that potentially some people are reinforced by the New Zealand accent, which I'm totally okay with.
I do listen to one true crime podcast, and it is a UK-based one, and I liked it because of the content and the way they presented it, but what kept me going is his amazing accent. It was just really relaxing and calming, so I feel the reinforcement with the accents for sure.
My English wife thinks it's weird that her daughter speaks like a Kiwi. So I can't believe this. This is not... Anyway, let's dive into the topic at hand. We are calling this episode Pause and Effect. Level up your positive reinforcement training skills, which I love because here at ATA, we're committed to helping you, the listener, master your animal training skills using a force-free approach. We totally understand the endless challenges you face and the broad knowledge and experience base required to handle them. We've all encountered those rough patches in our training that leave us feeling overwhelmed, and yet we believe everyone should feel empowered to positively impact the lives of the animal and human learners they interact with. Our primary objective, therefore, today is to assist you, the listener, with some possible approximations to help you overcome training challenges and alleviate any stress, frustration, and overwhelm they may cause. Through this, we aim to empower you to create a profound and positive impact on all the animals and humans you work with. Today, we'll be discussing 3 primary areas and their associated challenges where we can enhance our positive impact on animals. Tabitha, could you please identify the first challenge we're going to talk about today and describe how it affects trainers?
So as someone that is in both the veterinarian and animal behavior training worlds, as well as animal welfare worlds, one of the challenges that I see other trainers, including myself, face is building and sustaining relationships with veterinarians, because of course it's a team effort when it comes to animal care. And I always tell my clients, it is a team effort. It's a beautiful circle. And I make a little heart shape with my hands. And I actually, at the first consult, one of the things I'll do is say, prior to me even observing any signs of pain or other things that I would want to share with the veterinarian, I always say, hey, this is a team effort, and medical and physical issues align with emotional and mental issues. In many cases, behavioral issues are caused or contributed by medical issues. And I always say, like, hey, I'm lucky that I get to be in the home and see your animal in their natural setting and environments. And I want to share any observations I see with your veterinarian because it's a team effort. So I kind of approach the client immediately and say, hey, I'm going to need to have your vet on board. I want you to let your vet know that we're working together, to kind of set up that realistic expectation right at the gate. And if they don't have a veterinarian, because they may not, then I can talk about the importance of creating a relationship with a veterinarian for their animal. So it's a great starting point.
Do you find it's a problem that you come up against a lot where there is no relationship, or the relationship is strained, or there is unwillingness to explore that because of a variety of reasons? Maybe they don't see the importance of it, or they don't have time, or how big of a challenge is this to you? Or is it just something that you address and you can easily set that up without too much of a challenge?
That's a great point. So I think it depends. Unfortunately, with cats, a lot of people don't have relationships, in my experience, with veterinarians. It's more of I see the vet when my cat is sick, when I'm a caregiver and feel my cat is sick. And by the time a client recognizes that their cat is sick, their cat has been sick for quite a long time. So especially with cats, but with dogs too, there are cases where the client hasn't had a relationship with a vet or for years, and then I get more information. It could be, maybe their areas of veterinary desert, because that's a very real problem in some cities. Or maybe in most of the cases, the animal hasn't seen a vet because of the traumatic experiences of the past. It causes them stress to bring their animal, just the thought of bringing their animal to the vet, especially with their cats, causes them so much stress that they kind of just put it to the side. So they love their cat. They have nothing against veterinarians. But the great thing about being a consultant is that is something we can all easily tackle and help that client with, to help support them in maybe finding a veterinarian and what that looks like, but also teaching them how to decrease the stress associated with veterinary visits. And I think trainers don't realize how much power they have and how much they can help these clients, because I can't simply say, we should be ruling out and addressing medical issues. And as a veterinary technician, I know I have a little bit of a head essentially on that because I'm in both worlds. But I think as a trainer, you planting the seeds that veterinary care is needed and building a relationship with a veterinarian is going to help everyone in the long run, because that animal will get the care they need. Their medical issues may be addressed and or managed, but also that vet is going to see this amazing behavior consultant referred me. Maybe I should check them out. Maybe I should check out their website. And it's just a really great way to kind of lend a hand to start creating a relationship with vets, even if it's not necessarily, I have relationships with tons of vets that aren't started from me working with a client. I started those relationships ahead of time. So then I also have vets that I can trust and refer to when a client hasn't seen a vet that's more comfortable with handling fearful animals, because anyone who's ever heard me speak, handling is a skill. It's something I'm very passionate about. Many of us are not given many opportunities, even in the veterinarian world, to make that skill better. So when it comes to dealing with fearful animals, which many of us as behavior consultants, our animals that we work with tend to be like that, it's helpful to have vets that are more understanding and comfortable with handling fearful animals. And then you have that relationship. Again, it's just a win-win all around.
So for the trainers listening, which is the vast majority of the listeners of this show, is the problem that we're addressing here that trainers don't understand how much power they have to influence this thing? Or is the problem that trainers don't know that they should be having these conversations from the start? Is it both? And by the way, that's why I'm so happy that you're our guide today, because you do have your toes or your fingers in both. You have your toes in the pies, you've got your fingers in both pies, and your toes in the water in both areas. I like that combination though. You have your toes in the pie at both spaces. So what is the main problem you see? Is it that confidence as a consultant to actually influence your clients in that direction, or is it not knowing and not understanding the importance of having that as one of your beginning approximations in working with a client?
I think it's actually both. You hit the nail on the head there, because I think sometimes, and this may be due to their learning history where people haven't been open, or maybe they have worked with a veterinary professional and it hasn't been a good experience, right? And now that trainer or behavior consultant feels uncomfortable addressing it. Multiple reasons to that, why that can be. But I do think that sometimes because we just shut down and say vet stuff is vet stuff and trainer stuff is trainer stuff. And I think that's bizarre. Like that just probably because of my background, I just think that's mind blowing. Like it's so, we need each other. We desperately need each other. And by working together, not only are the animals getting better care, which is what we all want, but we're actually making our jobs as veterinary professional and as animal professionals way easier. So I do think sometimes they don't feel that they are in the place to say, hey, I'd love you to go to the veterinarian, or I'll hear the trainer say, go to the veterinarian, but that's it. And what I tend to see is kind of like as a vet tech, if I was like, give these meds 10 to 15 years ago, before I learned about behavior, if I just said, give these meds and the client didn't give them, I might have said 15 years ago, they're non-compliant. But now I'm like, whoa, I didn't show them or ask them or tell them how to do that. So simply telling a client to go to a vet, I don't think is an appropriate thing. I think we're kind of setting them up to fail versus, hey, here's some veterinarians I work with. They're comfortable with fearful animals. We already have a relationship. They're great. Here's ways to decrease the stress associated with veterinary visits. Here's ways to advocate for your pet, and kind of setting them up for success. Because another challenge that I think many of us, including myself, have had is the client has taken their animal to a vet maybe prior or more recently to our behavior consultation, and they use that word that we all aren't big fans of. They were fine. My animal is fine. And then I'm assessing the gait at the consults, and there's a lot of abnormalities in that animal's gait, or that animal struggles. They circle 4 times before they sit. Things that I'm not diagnosing, because as a veterinary technician, I don't do that. But also as a trainer, I don't do that. But can I see observations that I'm concerned about and then share those observations with the veterinarian? 100%. So I think instead of simply saying, go to the vet, helping that client, setting them up for success on how to get to the vet, addressing the client's concerns, because again, so many of the clients that I have worked with, they haven't seen vets in years, and it's due to the emotional trauma that the animal went through, the human went through, and trainers, superpowers, guys. There's so much we could do to help decrease the stress and then foster that bond with veterinarians, but also foster that bond with that animal.
So to get a little bit meta and to broaden the problem that we're talking about here, because you said a few things here. You said trainers might feel uncomfortable and trainers might shut down when coming to talk about this stuff. And I know, I can relate to that. I shut down in conversations where I feel vulnerable. And I feel if I put my voice out there or if I express what I actually think, I might be criticized or I might be questioned in terms of my knowledge, my skill, the worst case scenarios, my integrity. So I might shut down. So I think there's a potentially a bigger problem here. And tell me what you think. And that is, and I said it before, confidence. And it's maybe even that trainers know that they need to communicate this information to their clients. And it's that the problem is, how do we help trainers become more confident and remove that feeling of stress, remove that feeling of uncomfortableness, and remove that vulnerability that they have as subject matter experts coming into that space? So how does that feedback from what you've said sit with you, and what does it make you think?
No, that's a really good point. So I'm one of the most confident in this context, guys. We all have imposter syndrome, but when it comes to advocating for animals at the vet and working with veterinary professionals, I am a very confident person. But interestingly enough, when I go to the human doctor, I leave and then I'm mad at myself because I was like, I would never not ask that question at a vet visit. And now I'm super uncomfortable and stressed. And the doctor wasn't rude. The doctor didn't do anything to make me feel like I couldn't ask a question. So I can understand that feeling and that lack of confidence. And then if we're telling a client something that we're not super confident or comfortable with, of course, they're not going to take in that information as well. So some of the things that trainers and behavior consultants can do to help is, I think, building relationships with veterinarian professionals prior to working with specific clients. And it sounds cliche, but something I did was I went around to vet clinics and starting with maybe fear-free, low-stress handling veterinary clinics who are most likely they're going to be more open to behavior. Of course, every veterinary clinic should be open to behavior, but I think we all need a good starting point. So that's what I did. I found cat-friendly, low-stress handling, fear-free, certified type professionals and practices, and I just introduced myself with an introduction letter and my services and how I could help them. Because it sounds silly, but we have to sell ourselves. We're selling ourselves every day. And I think that, like, for example, something that I did, again, this is when I first started, like 8-10 years ago, where I was less confident, but something that is a big issue with cats is Pandora syndrome or cystitis, where a cat will their bladder will become inflamed. It's very painful. They'll have accidents. And what happens is they'll get treated symptomatically, which is wonderful, but then it just keeps happening because environment and behavior is a big part of managing that. So I would just drop, hey, how many cases of chronic cystitis do you have? Oh, that's so great, but also horrible as a joke. And then I'd be like, actually, I'm great at blank. This is how I can help. That's how I started, because I know that that's such a chronic issue at veterinary clinics. And that's a way I could fill that gap. So it's not just saying, because some of us also, sometimes I get that vibe where people are like, they should just want to work with us. They should just, I hear you, but I don't know you. And as a veterinary technician, when I was working in GP, if you're just like, hey, I'm a trainer, hi, work with me, I'm going to be like, okay, cool. You didn't introduce yourself. I don't know what your credentials are. What services do you offer? How can you help me? That's just normal business. It's not a personal thing. So kind of taking your ego out of it and going into it like, hey, I'm going to introduce myself. How can I help you? Of course, acquiring professional credentials and clearly stating your qualifications is very helpful, because veterinary medicine is a science-based, evidence-based, ideally, profession in most cases. And then, of course, knowing and embracing your limitations. I can't do everything. Nobody can. I have the things that I'm very good at, and that's how I sold myself. Just like when I'm working with veterinary practices, because I help to get them fear-free certified as a practice certification consultant, I tell them, you can't be VTSs in behavior and veterinarians and this and that and this. So I always ask, what does your relationship with behavior consultants and trainers look like? So I go into it saying, you're amazing. You're already doing so much. You realistically cannot do all of this. Just like in vet med, we have specialists that we refer to for internal medicine, radiology. This is the same for behavior. So knowing and embracing your limitations, and then referring to reputable sources of information. Those are, for example, in my intro little folder, and I would drop off snacks, because sugar is reinforcing to many veterinary professionals. Or even better, because if you did this when I was working in GP, I'd be like, I love them. I need to know more about them. If you called and said, what does the staff like? And you had a vegan option for me, oh, you got me. I'm in. And that's showing that you're going above and beyond in care. It's a quick 5-minute call. And in that folder, you just have a list of reputable resources where they can learn more about behavior, like fearfreehappyhomes.com, a few other resources. Like, I have that list. So already you're offering them services and help. So I think building that relationship to start is going to help you feel more confident with those specific veterinarians, right? Because you're building that relationship, that rapport. And then as you build more and more relationships, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable approaching veterinarians and veterinary professionals. Like, one of the things I ask clients at the initial consultation is, I say, I'm definitely going to be sharing my observations with the veterinarian, because I think it's really important. Again, that team effort thing I keep mentioning. And I say, so can you just call them and let them know that you're working with me? And could you just ask what their preferred method of contact is? Email, call, etc. So I'm already, because we're all busy and I'm respecting their time. So again, I've learned this over the years. It has not always been this, this clean. But throughout this, now I have veterinarians reaching out to me to drop my cards off that I have never even worked with. So, but I think we all have to start somewhere. But I was that trainer who was also a vet tech. So I had that going for me, and I still felt super overwhelmed about introducing myself and selling myself. But find your niche. And you could even then say, once you build a relationship with a veterinarian, hey, I would love to have puppy and kitten socialization classes at your vet clinic. Hey, I would love to offer cooperative care training. I would love to see more trainers working with veterinary clinics in that kind of realm, where maybe they're working there once a week on a weekend doing a kitten socialization class. That would just warm my heart, because you're benefiting me as a veterinary professional, but then also you're getting benefits as a trainer.
All right, so let's get even more meta.
I love it.
So the problem is trainers not feeling like they maybe have the impact on their clients to suggest that their clients build this relationship with their vets. They might not have the confidence. They might be feeling uncomfortable. It might make them stressed to approach this. One solution is for trainers to first start to build that network with vets themselves. And to do that, we can go in and sell ourselves to the vets. Now, I know just like the word fine, my animal is fine, the word selling can elicit certain emotions in some individuals. I like to reframe that and think about, to take this whole concept we're talking about of what problems are we solving, think about the vets. We're not necessarily, one might frame it as, selling ourselves to the vet in terms of we're going in there and to solve their problems.
Right.
So we talk about the status. I don't know what the letters were in front of the status that you talked about with cats. But is that the problem? So we help with that, but what does that help the vets then accomplish? What are the vets lying awake at night thinking about and having extra long showers because they've been ruminating these challenges? What are these challenges? How does it relate to the status? And what is the, I'm going to save you time. I'm here to save you time. Or like, what is the actual problem that we're solving for the vets? Does that make sense?
No, I definitely get that. And I think that's also a really important thing to do, because I think sometimes we can make assumptions as trainers or behavior consultants about veterinary professionals. And again, I've seen it on both sides, and I'm sure I've been a part of both sides in my life at some point. But I think I love that approach, just saying, this is what I do. These are the services I offer. What challenges do you feel like I can help you with? Just approaching it like that already helps you kind of to build that rapport and get the veterinarian or technician to understand that you want to help them. For example, something I do because handling is one of my favorite things, I offer, which to each their own, but if I have a client with an animal, a cat or dog, like I have a client with a dog who he has severe generalized anxiety and some other issues. It's been very well managed. Caregiver is amazing. She went to get a second opinion from a different veterinarian because there were some pretty severe medical issues that were also not being managed very well. So she went to do that. And then she let me know that her dog had some anxiety, because now that my client, as trainers, we teach clients to understand what their animal is feeling. So she recognized that her animal was feeling stress at the vet. So I have just a template email where I will actually reach out to the veterinarian, and I'm happy to share it with the guests or with the listeners, because you guys may change it up. But essentially, it talks about how we both want what's best for the animal, and I can help to create a handling plan to decrease the fear or stress for you and for the dog. And also this in turn saves you time, makes you more efficient because less staff members will be needed. I understand the sell word, maybe not everyone's favorite, but that's just how in my brain I say it. It's just easier for me to do that. But essentially what I mean by sell is, how can I help them? How can I address the veterinarian and technician's needs? And this veterinarian was so wonderful. They emailed me back immediately and said, yes, please. And that doesn't always happen, and that's okay. And they went above and beyond and had the technician Zoom with me. And we talked about handling goals, because sometimes a lot of my patients, the handling goals are to safely sedate them. Not in this case, but we talk, because also I might have goals. I need to know what your goals are as a veterinarian. What do you need to do to this dog, right? Instead of just assuming, which I think sometimes happens, where they'll definitely draw blood from this leg. That's what's going to happen, versus understanding that that may not happen. And that if we're teaching this animal cooperative care, we need to discuss with the client that they may not be able to draw from the lateral saphenous. They may draw from a cephalic or another vein, and set that client up for success as well. So I know I went on a little bit of a rant there, because that's what happens when I get excited. But that was a way that I I see a challenge consistently, because also if that animal is traditionally restrained and there's a lot of fear and stress, that veterinary staff is more likely to get injured, and I care about them. I don't want them to be injured. I definitely don't want the dog that I'm working with to have more trauma, because most of the animals I work with are severe behavior cases, which is why I started, again, I'm setting up my clients up for success. I talked a lot about that, where I'm talking to them how to decrease stress at the vet. And then I realized, I was like, I'm not reaching out to the vets with handling plans. And I was like, that's bizarre. Why am I not setting up the vets for success too? And now that's just something I do naturally. And the more you do it, because again, that's something I offer for free for my clients and the veterinarians they're working with. But that vet, for example, I have never worked with. And as soon as we got off the Zoom, the technician texted me and said, because we exchanged numbers, texted me and said, could you share some of your cards? We would love to. And I was like, this is amazing. Now I have this relationship with this vet who wants my website and wants my cards. And all I did was extend a helping hand in a way. Again, I addressed a problem and I was kind. I wasn't pushy. I was respectful. I just put myself out there and they took it and went above and beyond with it.
If you're a trainer and you might not feel comfortable talking to your clients about the fact that we need to involve a vet, it might be stressful for you. You might feel a little bit overwhelmed when you think about those conversations. We understand. Tabitha's been there. She's done that. She wasn't always like this, as she says, but she's overcome those challenges to be here today and sharing her insights from her knowledge and experience with you. The plan is build relationships with vets as a path to grow your confidence in doing that, so that you can help more animals and clients. And we don't want people feeling all of those nasty things we've talked about. We want people to help doing this. So that's number one. Looking at the time, I'm going to move on, please, to number two, Tabitha. What is the second area and its associated challenges where we can enhance our positive impact on animals?
And this kind of segues from our relationships with vets, cooperative care, which is another one of my favorite things, especially as someone that works in both of the worlds. And I understand that cooperative care can be really challenging for multiple reasons. It can be really challenging even for the best trainer to teach some of these behaviors to fluency. But also, there are a lot of things out of our control. A poke hurts. It hurts, right? That animal may have GI pain chronically. That animal may be nauseous. These are things that the veterinarian can help manage. But these animals that we're working with are making these associations all the time. So sometimes I feel like as trainers, since we are just wonderful perfectionists, that we think cooperative care looks a very specific way and we kind of put it in a box. And as someone who works with a lot of animals for the first time, and I'm just utilizing lots of little things to decrease stress. And what ends up happening is, yes, I just met this animal. Yes, I'm doing exam and blood work, but if a trainer was to watch it, they would say that is a cooperative relationship. There's cooperative care happening here. So something that I like to talk about is to not be so hard on ourselves with cooperative care and realize that perfection is not a thing. There's so many things out of our control. And just like with socialization, we can't expose them positively in a controlled setting to everything. The goal is to expose them to things in a controlled setting while they're feeling positive emotions, and ideally they will generalize it. And that's the truth with cooperative care too. So I think a big thing is to not be a perfectionist and understand that it's not going to always look like what you think it is. But on the other hand, you need to understand where the veterinary team is coming from and understand that they are doing the best they can as well. And they do not, most behavior professionals or veterinary professionals, including myself, I learned essentially nothing about behavior as a vet tech. So sometimes I think that trainers and behavior consultants can go to work with working with a client, they hear about the appointment and they're like, blah, 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 blah. But also, as someone that is a vet tech and went to school and was taught traditional restraint, and at that time I was doing the best with what I was taught and wasn't really taught to assess green or yellow body language, mostly red. Essentially, I feel unsure because that dog's lunging at me. I'm still given one handling technique to do that. Again, I've gotten far away from that and I've learned a lot more, but that's a lot of the foundation, and it's getting better in the veterinary world because, again, there's so many things on our plates anyways, but we're adding behavior into that, which is wonderful. But I think setting up realistic expectations for your client and for the vet team. So for example, if I'm doing cooperative care, and I was telling him that my experience is probably a little different than others, because most of the cooperative care cases I work are my animal's been fired from a veterinarian, or my animal has unfortunately bitten, or it's not ideal. But we need to, or the veterinarian reaches out, this client cannot give meds and I don't know what to do, or this dog cannot be seen safely. So the first thing I do is talk to the vet and we say goals. And again, usually one of the goals is to safely sedate. So I tell that client, I love a chin rest, you guys. I love a station. Stations are my thing. Everyone has their things. But I'm going to tell that client our goal to start is to safely sedate your dog. That is our goal. Then we can work up to maybe an exam without sedation, blood work, et cetera, et cetera. Also, being aware of where veterinary professionals draw blood and how we do things. For example, in my cooperative care lectures, I share a few infographics where we give vaccines, because there is a reason why we give them in specific places, and then where we draw blood from. Because if you're a trainer teaching cooperative care and you don't have that information, it's going to be really challenging for both you and the veterinary professional since you may be on different wavelengths, not maliciously. So I think, long story short, we should be kind and empathetic to veterinary professionals and understand that they are not trainers. They are not behavior consultants. I never even heard of cooperative care. I never even used a basket muzzle, everybody. And I know many of you may be alarmed by that, but I worked in GP for 12 years. And for the first 7 years of working in GP, I have never even heard of a basket muzzle. And I know some of you may be alarmed by that, but that's the reality. And thankfully, more practices have basket muzzles. But for us to I think sometimes we just assume a lot. And by assuming, we set up everyone to fail. So I think being kind and empathetic to veterinary professionals, but also setting up realistic expectations for that client, saying, hey, this chin rest is great, but we're still going to schedule at a quieter time per day. We still may your veterinarian still may prescribe and recommend pre-visit pharmaceuticals. We're going to be feeding 100%. This is something that we don't feed while they get the poke. They just have the chin rest. And I'm like, what is happening? They're actually being poked. We should definitely be feeding, because my definition, which is from the Cooperative Veterinary Care textbook, which I highly recommend, is if an animal is comfortably eating throughout a procedure. So I'm not saying they're like alligator snapping, actively trying to get away with tense body language, eating peanut butter, right? They're fairly relaxed, actively eating while they're getting a medical procedure done, whether it's cleaning their ears but again, I see many people who are like, we just have to do a chin rest and they have to sit through it throughout this whole thing, and that perfectionist stuff. And that's not what it needs to be.
So for the listener, is the problem that we've learned all of this information and we see I am navigating in my thoughts towards social media having such a powerful antecedent role in this problem that you're describing here, and consequence in terms of, if I share something on social media, what are the consequences of that? Antecedent as in, I'm seeing Tabitha and I'm seeing all of these other trainers on social media, and I want my training to look like that. And if it doesn't, then, I'm not a trainer. I'm not fitting into the pigeonhole the label that I'm placing upon myself as a cooperative care force-free trainer. And that creates dissonance in me. It makes me feel a difference between who I think I am and what I'm actually doing. That's a very uncomfortable place to be in. And you've used this word perfectionist a couple of times. So I think I'm trying to really articulate what the challenge is here, what the problem is, and that perfectionist label interests me. Why is it, do you think? And maybe it's because of some of the things I've just said, but I'm really curious in your words and to hear if there's other things. Why is it that you think the trainers you see might feel this need to be perfect?
Because I have felt it. So, for example, I work with Fear Free. I work with low stress handling. I teach these things for a living. And I share a lot of, so for example, anytime any of my animals have anything done, I record it because I want people to have real life things. And I'm like, even though, and it's funny because even though based on my learning history, I'm like, this is amazing. But then I'll be honest, I was hesitant to share some of those videos. And it wasn't because of animal or veterinary professionals or the general public. It was because I was worried about behavior professionals. And I'm just being honest. I've gotten more comfortable and confident, especially as someone that's a vet tech. And yes, fear anxiety exists. There are things, this cat is nauseous and doesn't feel well. Yes, this dog is an FAS2, which is a body language score that I like to use. This dog's an FAS2, so he's showing multiple displacement behaviors. But he used to be an FAS5, and I did very small things, lots of them. And now this dog is an FAS2. To me, that's so perfect and amazing that I'm going to get emotional. But if a trainer sees that, right, they may say, that's not cooperative care. And I'm saying this from my own insecurity because I wasn't hesitant to post for any other reason. But in the videos, which you can find many because I share a lot of them because I want compassionate handling, cooperative care, all these lovely words that we use to describe it. I want it to be more seen and known. And when people see video examples, whether you're a veterinary professional or the general public, and I'm narrating and sharing it, it helps people realize Tabitha's not just saying this, she's showing this. But I think I use the word perfectionist a lot because I've really struggled a lot. And again, I'm in definitely a better place now, but I would be hesitant to, it's funny, I was talking to Michael Shikashio and he had me come and speak at one of his online events. And Michael's so kind, but real talk, everybody, I was so nervous about sharing my cooperative care videos because these are FAS5 dogs. There was an FAS5 dog, there was an FAS4 cat, because that's the reality of the world, everybody. And these are the animals that I work with. So and for the one, we had 3 classical counterconditioning and desensitization sessions, which we all know for severe trauma, that is not many. But I was doing the best with what the client could do. The dog needed things. And honestly, Michael really helped boost my confidence because after he saw it, he's like, that was amazing. And I was so worried because he's a trainer that his idea of cooperative care is a dog with FAS0, loose, wiggly, chin resting, getting blood work done. And that is not, again, I'm not saying that isn't amazing, but there is fear and stress associated. When I go to the human doctor, I have an FAS, I have my own little idea of what FAS looks like in me. Out of 5, I'm probably an FAS 2.5 on arrival into a hospital because of my past learning history. Not because doctors have held me down, which is something that unfortunately does sometimes happen with animals, but because when I've gone to the doctor, I have felt like shit. I've been nauseous. I've been painful. So I think I use that word perfect because I have struggled with it a lot. But if I'm doing anything to decrease the amount of fear and stress for that patient, I'm doing something good. And sometimes it's not even necessarily because every client may not teach cooperative care. I work with a lot of animals that have no history of it, but can I schedule their appointment at a quieter time, like the last end of the day or in the afternoon? Could I tell that client, hey, let's talk about low stress travel. Let's make the car a happy place. Let's play classical music, or per app for cats, which is what I use. And then when you get to the vet, just give them a call and say, hey, whenever there's a room available, just let me know. We're going to hang out in the car. If you're running late, no worries, because be kind to veterinary people. They're doing their best. And then you're avoiding the stress of a lobby altogether. So many animals, especially dogs, go over threshold in the lobby. So by the time the veterinarian gets in there, or the technician, that animal is already over threshold. And there's little things, again, power of trainers, everybody, that you can do, even if that dog has no history of what we would define as cooperative care. Because to me, cooperative care is just cooperatively working. And this is not, again, this is just my opinion. I think it's just cooperatively working with that animal in front of me, which means assessing their body language, setting up the antecedents that I can to decrease stress. So having everything ready ahead of time, avoiding the lobby, all of that stuff that we can do, giving my dog a bathroom break before they go into the hospital. That sounds so simple, but it has been mind-blowing since I've told clients to do that. The difference, because if any of you have held your bladders, my anxiety is horrible when my bladder is, I'm getting better. As a vet tech, I was conditioned to hold my pee for hours. It's not great. I've had to uncondition it. But again, I don't think cooperative care, I would love for it to get away from that perfect concept and just doing the best to cooperatively work with that animal, and also being empathetic to our veterinary professionals.
Well, again, that's why I'm so glad that you're here today as our guide, because you understand, and thank you for bravely sharing that example with us. I'm curious if one of the problems here is a disparity between our understanding of and application of the science of learning to non-human learners and then to human learners. When we're talking about cooperative care in a vet clinic, there are multiple learners there. There's the non-human, and I wonder if the challenges with focusing all of our approximation efforts and celebration of those approximations on the human learner, and we need that end product, but we have the client who's a learner and who has learning history and who has their next approximation as a learner as part of the team to get to where we want to get with this animal, whatever it may be. We have the vet team who are all learners and who have different approximations and all need reinforcement for those approximations if we want to see their behaviors repeated again in the future. And we have you as a learner who needs to build your skills as a coach, as a consultant, and celebrate your own approximation. And that idea of perfect, in that amount of learners operating together, there is so much to celebrate there. And is the problem that there's a disparity, that we're losing sight of that and we're not focusing on the shaping plans for the human learners as well as the non-human learners?
Ryan is so wonderful at listening to me banter as I'm passionate and then taking these lovely little tidbits. He is just wonderful. So yes, I think it's which is why I use that word team effort, because it's, even if I'm doing something, let's say I'm working to get better at something alone, that's challenging, let alone, like you mentioned, all of these learners. And in a veterinary hospital, I'm experiencing a CSR. I'll be experiencing multiple veterinarians, assistants, veterinary technicians, and they all have different learning histories and different approaches based on those learning histories. So I think that's a really good way to word it. And I think that's one of the challenges. I think as a veterinary technician, seeing the way cooperative care is presented, I struggle a little bit sometimes. Getting really vulnerable here, everybody. Oh my gosh, please don't judge me. But I struggle a little bit because I see the way it's presented, and I am, as someone that is in it and has worked in multiple situations, even in an emergency situation, a true emergency, there is a lot I can do to cooperatively work with that patient and decrease stress and fear. And but again, the way I see it presented is as this box, especially with we all know those fun words, all those fun definitions, which I'm a behavior nerd. I get it. But I do think it makes things a little more, like Ken Ramirez has talked about it. He has a whole lecture on just how there's 30 different definitions for one word, and how it actually makes it really challenging for us to work together because of that, because we're already having like a different communication. So I think what I see being presented as cooperative care versus what I feel, and a lot of my veterinary professional friends who also are VTSs in behavior or very experienced in behavior, they're very different. And that has been really interesting to me as I've gone through this process of having my own behavior consulting business and seeing essentially what you said, the disconnect there. And actually, the good news is I'm starting to identify that there's a disconnect. And once we identify the maybe a why there's a disconnect, we can start to address it, which is why I love to talk about this. Because I don't think cooperative care is essentially dog goes to station, gives chin rest, person does exam, blood work, FAS 0, done. That is not most cases. And that's how I feel. I see it presented. And then I feel self-conscious about sharing a video of drawing blood on a cat who's eating off a licky mat with FAS 1. I feel hesitant to share that. And that, looking back, it blows my mind that I ever felt hesitant to share that. But I think it's because of the way cooperative care is presented to most of us. And then I also feel like from the general public's perspective, yes, they love their animals so much. We all know it. Veterinarian professionals love animals. We do not like seeing animals stressed. We're just not, for example, I was not provided with many tools to decrease stress when I went to tech school. So I think we all know that our caregivers love their animals, but I also understand how the concept of cooperative care can be very overwhelming for caregivers, which is why the way I present cooperative care is anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. There are steps anyone can take, whether it's preventative or, like, let's say the animal doesn't have FAS associated with veterinary travel procedures, or if the animal has severe. There are steps that can be taken to keep everyone safe and decrease fear and stress. And some of those steps are very simple that I could share in an Instagram post. And the power of that. And then you see caregivers again, they're getting reinforced because they're like, I can do that. I read this on a post. I can do that. I can hang out in my car and avoid the lobby and bring a licky mat and my cat's or dog's favorite treat. I could definitely do that. And then you start to get buy-in, because that, instead of this whole, you have to teach your dog for a year. Again, I love that too. And that is something that I do. But I think we make it inaccessible, actually, to caregivers based on the way I'm seeing it presented. Hot take. Ryan's making me get vulnerable up in here.
Well, thank you for getting vulnerable. I know that our listeners are going to appreciate it because they're going to be wondering if you're talking about them. I think that behavior is a study of one, and every client is an individual. Anyone can do it because everyone can take an approximation from where they are to where we want to take them. And I think we need to celebrate those approximations for our clients, even if they sat in a car, which they've never done before, and then everything else after that went horrible. Where's our focus? What are we reinforcing? What behaviors do we want to see more of in the future? And just a caveat, I think some of us are resilient enough to be vulnerable and get challenging feedback and navigate through that and come out the other side stronger. But a lot of us aren't. So I also think, just a caveat, when you're sharing on social media, protect yourself and find your supportive community, because it can be a place.
I am not on TikTok for my mental health.
Yeah, I'm not on
So
TikTok.
everyone's boundaries are different, and that is, and social media we all know is a amazing thing, but also, whoo, it could be. So I love that you brought that very important point up.
So the challenge is redefining cooperative care. As a trainer, it can be overwhelming to understand and make that leap to celebrating our clients and our vet tech's approximations and our own approximations as a consultant, which might mean that the care for the non-human learner looks different than what you're seeing on social media. That can feel very uncomfortable. We totally get that. But if we can approximate towards ourselves, recognizing each human learner and celebrating their approximations, we can grow our skills as a consultant. And ultimately, we can help more animals and more human learners, just more learners in general. We don't want anyone feeling these horrible things. We want you to be the ripple maker that you were born to be. So thank you for sharing that, Tabitha. Let's go on to the last and final area and associated challenges where we can enhance our positive impact on animals.
So this is another interesting thing, but it sounds cliche, but I think taking care of ourselves allows us to take care of the clients and animals that we work with a lot more efficiently and productively. And that's something that I think we've all heard. I've heard, but I would be like, meh, I don't have time. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to take care of myself. I don't have time. That's something that was like essentially something I feel like I said at least once a day. And the last 3 years, I have really looked at my mental and physical health and addressed it. And I have been on an interesting journey. I am very open about my mental health. I know everyone else is in different spaces, and I completely understand that. But in the veterinary community, suicide, compassion fatigue, pretty severe mental health issues, it's common in every community. It's just, unfortunately, in the veterinary field, I feel like I lose a colleague once a week at this point to suicide. So that, I think that's part of the reason why I'm so open and vulnerable with my mental health journey, and also trying to get others to understand through my experiences, because my experiences are mine and yours are yours, why it's so important. Because again, I was that tech trainer who we love our jobs. That's the other thing, right? There's that joke, when you do what you're passionate, it's not fun anymore. It's still fun for me, guys. I love my job most days because it's normal to not love your job every day. Again, I've gotten better at acknowledging my emotions and feeling them and then letting them pass, which is a huge thing for me. But essentially during the pandemic, I had a bit of a struggle, as many of us did. And I was like, what is happening? So then, and again, I'm a huge mental health advocate, but I wasn't really looking at myself, which it's really challenging. Sometimes you don't even know you're going through something, which is why friends and family are so important, or you don't know you're struggling with burnout, or you don't know you're struggling with compassion fatigue. Because when you're in it, it's so challenging to recognize that. And if you don't recognize that, you can't start to, the first step in getting help, however that may look, and managing issues, is identifying it. So essentially, I had a few great friends and family, and then I just had a lot of experiences, and I essentially treated myself like I would one of the animals that I work with. I wrote down my triggers. I wrote down my enrichment, and guess what, everybody? I had fucking none. I had no enrichment at all. And I was like, oh, this might be why I'm a little stressed. My physical and mental needs are not even barely met. So I seeked a therapist. And one of the first things when Ryan talks about small approximations, again, I think a lot of us are perfectionists, especially in the veterinary world. Because I went into therapy with all these things I wanted to do. That's not how therapy works. Where I was like, I'm going to be so good. The things are going to get done. I'm going to feel better. And my therapist was like, hey, so how about we just start with you eating 3 times a day, drinking water, and not taking your laptop to bed? And so she created small approximations where I could easily be reinforced. And then I also started taking anti-anxiety medications, which I have, again, I'm a huge fan of. I actually talk to my clients about this a lot because a lot of the animals I work with, medications are indicated, and I work with veterinary behaviorists and veterinarians, and I am very open. And it's funny because I'm like, my mom's the best mom ever, but I have a lot of stress. Every single client laughs and say, yeah. So then I immediately have like an in for them to understand that their animal has anxiety without having to say it. It's a beautiful thing. They get an understanding. But I started medications, and by doing those first steps, I was then in a place where I could then start to do the additional steps, because you can't just start working out when you're depressed. You can't. It's just not the way it works. We're over threshold. We know this as behavior professionals. You can't say that dog who's in front of his trigger barking, just sit. That is not okay. And we're setting that dog up to fail. So now I'm like, I think I told myself those things. I was like, you just need to work less, or you just need to work more, or you just need to see one more client, or you just need to do this. And then I realized that it's a process. Progress is not linear. And once I started medications, then I started understanding that I need to start working out, physical activity for enrichment for me. And I found a trainer because I was like, I need accountability and I need that. And long story short, it's been 3 years. I am an ultra runner now. I work out 3 times a week. It is my everything. I have hobbies outside of work. Hey, everybody, life changing. My hobbies used to be doing behavior CE. That's not a hobby. Training your own animals, not a hobby. I used to say these things. It's not a hobby, guys. And I'm in the best mental health space I've been in my entire life, which also it happens to equal to I'm in the best physical shape of my life. And I saw through my experience that I am so much, again, I've heard it, but now I'm living it because I don't know if I believed it. I am so much more productive. I can get so much more done. I'm so much better. Not that I was angry with clients again, right? But I know that even though I felt like I was giving my all, I was seeing too many clients. I mean, I was seeing too many. Even as a skilled professional, if I'm just giving a little bit to everyone, that's not appropriate. And that was something, especially kind of the messages that we all receive, right? Where a lot of my cases are severe and the things in the messages are, yeah, it's rough. And I used to be like, I have to see everybody and help everybody and blah. And through this whole mental health journey, I'm such a better person. And also it's helped me actually relate to my clients more, and again, allows me to be more productive. But also because you matter, everybody. Yes, the animals you work with and people you work with matter, but you matter. So I know that was a long answer, Ryan. But
well, I just want to take a moment because I know you've mentioned that you've been vulnerable on today's podcast episode. I feel like I observed then when you said, I can't remember what you're talking about, but you needed, tell me if I'm wrong. At one point then you needed to just catch your breath. And as I sensed emotions were welling up around you, maybe your eyes were getting a little bit tingly as you're talking about some of this stuff. His
body language observation.
Am I right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I'm very open. Like I have a podcast and I actually have Mental Health Matters episodes. Like I am very open and vulnerable with my mental health struggles. But although I am very confident and comfortable, it's still hard.
That's right? What I wanted to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's still challenging for sure.
Because I've been through my challenges and like yourself, I've made a commitment to be an individual who talks about it, and therefore it's become normalized. I talk about this. I know that it resonates. I'm reinforced for doing it. But for the listeners, that doesn't mean that talking about it becomes any. It's not flowing. out of mouths this topic without a lot going on inside as we share what we're sharing. And I think it was when you were talking about losing friends in the end. So I want to share sincere gratitude for the vulnerability shown with us today, but also that you've made a decision to normalize that in how you show up in podcast episodes and in conferences and spaces where people in our industry work. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And like you mentioned, at first it was even more challenging to do, but it's definitely been normalized because it comes up a lot, especially it's a big part, physical health, mental health. It's a big part of all of our lives all the time. And I think understanding, because again, this is something I say all the time. I am so thankful. I have an amazing support system. I have an amazing partner. I have amazing friends and family. And during some of those, because I'm bipolar and I am not ashamed of it. And that was something that it was a lot for me to take on. I was super ashamed of it for a minute, which upset me, actually, because I was like, I'm a mental health advocate. Why am I so? And this is where even when we kind of take ourselves out of it and say, because I was like, how am I ashamed of this? And then also, when I was in a very, very dark place, I remember, this was a long time ago, I remember being afraid to tell people. And that's really honestly what triggered me to start talking about my mental health, because I was like, I'm one of the lucky people who have a support system. Some people don't. And I'm extroverted. I'm like one of the most extroverted people in the entire world. And I was like, I'm afraid to say that I'm feeling suicidal. So I was like, whoa, once I got beyond that and reflected, I was like, whoa, that's heavy. Like people without support systems and again, because I was ashamed what my friends would think, which I'm so upset at myself for even feeling that way. But that was a really eye-opening experience for me. And this was 5 years ago. But that's honestly, and that was one of the big things that caused me to then start down this amazing path. So, I'm thankful for every experience in my life because I love who I am. And that's another thing, that I'm only 39 and I love who I am. And I a lot of my older friends joke with me and they're like, it took me 70 years to learn that. So therapy is awesome, everybody.
When's your birthday?
April 27th.
So you're 40 next year. I'm 40 in December.
I'm embracing it. I'm trying to really hard.
I'm celebrating getting older.
Yes.
So I think that obviously everyone experiences the continuum that is mental health, with extreme joy on one side and extreme depression on the other. We're always somewhere on that continuum. We use labels like imposter syndrome, compassion fatigue, burnout to help us communicate about where we might be on that. But I love your tip about getting hobbies outside of work, finding something non-animal related to take your mind off the thing you do for the rest of your time. I've been through that process as well. I think that improves your self-care, and ultimately, the funny thing is, it helps you help more animals because you're showing up better.
Right. And having the other thing that's been life-changing for me, having goals outside of work. So I'm training for a 100-miler because yes, I'm extra. And I've ran marathons, I've ran 50Ks, and a 100-miler, a 50K, a marathon, all of these things, you can't just get up and bless you guys if you can, but most of us, including me, cannot just get up and do that. So having these challenges, I remember when I did my first 50K, I get emotional thinking about it. Like I'm a trail runner, so just thinking the amount of joy I felt pure joy for like 3 months. And I was like, is this what it's like because I'm so stoked. Like getting my VTS was so challenging. It was a huge life change, like a huge accomplishment, all of these other things. But all of those are essentially work related. So this was the first true goal where it wasn't just, oh, you do something for a week. You have to do stuff for weeks, months. And with this 100-miler, it's not till December, but I'm running, 50 miles a week. It's a lot of work. But having these goals outside of work, oh my gosh, it has been amazing. I'm just like, how was I late to the game? How did I not know the joy in this?
Yeah, well, I'm so thrilled for you and so thrilled for your journey and may it get even better from this day forward. Hey, Tabitha, looking at the time, we're going to share gratitude for everything today. Before we officially wrap up, though, would you kindly direct our listeners to their next digital destination? Where can they cyber stalk you, learn more about your work, and potentially slide into your professional DMs?
So you can find me at chirrupsandchatter.com. And then I am on Facebook and Instagram at Chirrups and Chatter. I share tons of fun handling videos and more there. And then also I have a podcast because it's 2023. Who doesn't? Called Tales from a Vet Tech, where essentially the goal is to support, advocate, and highlight amazing animal professionals, but also in all the worlds. Because there's so many amazing, we can learn so much from each other, which is, I'm sure, a big reason why Ryan does this podcast. But I cover animal welfare, behavior, and vet med.
Amazing. And we will, of course, link to all of us in the show notes as well. This has been so much fun from myself, and on behalf of everyone listening, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today. Tabitha, thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you do, Ryan. You're just such a genuine, kind person. Hopefully I could go to New Zealand soon and see you and your wife.
And thank you as well so much for listening. This is your host, Ryan Cartledge, signing off from this episode of the Animal Training Academy podcast show. It's our hope today's conversation sparked inspiration and added some tools to your trainer's toolbox. Remember, every training challenge is an approximation towards becoming a better trainer. Embrace the rough patches, learn from them, and keep improving. And don't forget, the path to growing your skills and expanding your knowledge continues beyond this episode. Visit www.atamember.com to join our waitlist and be the first to know when our membership doors open again. There you'll find a supportive community of trainers just like you, working to make a positive difference in the lives of animals and humans alike. Until next time, keep honing your skills, stay resilient, and remember, every interaction with an animal or human learner is your opportunity to create ripples. We're here cheering you on every step of the way. See you at the next episode.